Hello and welcome back as we continue talking about CSA concepts. In this lesson, we're going to focus on elasticity and scalability. So now we have focused a lot on these two concepts throughout this course, so you should have a good working definition of both elasticity and scalability. However, in this lesson, I want to talk specifically about several different types of scaling that we need to know, and then also how we need to look at different AWS services in terms of elasticity and scalability, because elasticity and scalability differs from service to service. So to this point, we've been talking a lot about auto scaling based on demand. This is scaling that occurs based off increase in demand for an application. So when we set up our EC2 instances behind an elastic load balancer and included an auto scaling group, this is the type of scaling that we're talking about. As traffic gradually increases, the auto scaling group will add more instances, and then as traffic gradually decreases, it will decrease the amount of EC2 instances. But there's two other types of scaling that we should be aware of. One is proactive cycle scaling, and the other is proactive event-based scaling. So proactive cycle scaling is scaling that occurs at fixed intervals. So let's say that every day when business starts, say at 9 a.m., we know that we're going to need 5 more instances, right? We're going to need 5 more instances from 9 a.m. to say 5 p.m. Well, we can set that up so that each day we're automatically going to generate those additional 5 that will be needed in advance of demand triggering that increase. So it's a way to us to be proactive, but on a cycle where it's going to be the same day to day. The next is proactive event-based scaling. And this is scaling in anticipation of an event, generally a major event, so a launch event or putting up a major news or blog post, something where we know that our traffic may go from 5,000 visitors a day to 50,000 visitors a day, right? Something where there's going to be a major increase. And what we can do is we can also contact AWS and have them pre-warm our Elastic Load Balancer to make sure that it is aware and will be able to handle that huge demand and increase in traffic that is going to occur on that one day or based on that one event. Because as I'm sure most of you are aware, you've probably gone to a website on a major launch day and that website is crashed. That is probably because they didn't proactively scale properly for event-based scaling. So again, event-based scaling is where we're going to provision and make sure that we have already scaled our application to handle a major one-time event. Now, what we also want to do is we want to plan to scale out rather than up. This is horizontal scaling. And what we mean by horizontal scaling is that we want to add more instances, i.e. horizontal scaling versus scaling up, which would be to increase the size of our instance from, say, a T1 micro to an M1 large. So we want to add more EC2 instances to handle increases in capacity rather than increase instance size. Now to do this though, we do have to be sure to design for the proper instance size to start. We don't want to end up with 20 T2 micros when we can end up with 3 M1 larges. So we could start with 1 M1 large as opposed to say 8 T2 micros. So there's different ways that we have to look at scaling and making sure that we choose the proper instance size to start. We also always want to use tools like auto scaling and elastic load balancing, which we have talked about at length during this course. Also, a scaled service should be fault tolerant and operationally efficient, and a scalable service should become more cost effective as it grows. So as we scale out our application, the cost per unit that we use, or the cost per instance, or the cost per storage unit should decrease as we use more of it, right? This is the concept of bulk buying. As we buy more of something, the cost per unit of that thing should reduce. If your cost per unit as you scale is not decreasing, then you are probably doing something wrong in your architecture. Now let's take a look at two separate services that AWS offers and take a look at how elasticity and scalability differs between the two. Now for DynamoDB, which is a fully managed NoSQL service, it has high availability and scalability built in. It will automatically replicate your data across availability zones, and it will automatically increase in size with demand. You don't have to manage that at all. All a developer has to do is specify the required throughput for the tables, and you're done. With RDS, though, scaling is done in several different ways, as RDS does not support a cluster of instances to load balance traffic across. Because of this, there are a few different methods to scale traffic with RDS. First, we can utilize read replicas to offload heavy read-only traffic. Next, we can increase the instance size to handle increases in load. And lastly, we can utilize Elasticache clusters for caching database session information. So unlike with DynamoDB, where there isn't anything we have to do for high availability and scalability, with RDS, we can actually manage things like the instance side, read replicas, or utilize other AWS services like Elasticache to help scale our application to handle increases in load. So again, these are just some of the core concepts and things we need to know about elasticity and scalability, and I would certainly make sure to spend some time making sure that you understand the differences and the reasons for proactive cycle scaling, proactive event-based scaling, and auto-scaling based on demand. And with that, we will conclude this lesson. Thank you for watching. You may now move on.